You're listening to the Skeptics Guide to the Universe, your escape to reality.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptics Guide to the Universe. Today is Thursday, February 26, 2026, and this is your host, Stephen Novella. Joining me this week are Bob Novella.
Hey, everybody.
Kara Santamaria.
Howdy.
Jay Novella.
Hey, guys.
And Evan Bernstein.
Good evening, everyone.
How are y'all doing?
Oh,
surviving.
y'all doing fine.
Yeah. All y'all doing good?
I love it.
Starting to warm up already.
It was like 80 degrees outside in LA today. I'm like, well, what is
there.
Yeah.
Not here.
I know you guys have been buried under snow, haven't you?
Yeah, we had like an old school winter we haven't had in a while.
Man.
We definitely moved away from like the weather that was typical in the 70s and 80s. But this winter was like when I was a kid. Cold, tons of snow, lots of missed school days. My kids missed Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this week.
Now, Jay, when that happens now, do they try to do online teaching or it's just a snow day?
No, it's just a snow day. There is no indication of any kind of online anything going on.
So they've really just abandoned that.
Yeah.
I was wondering if that would be a keeper after COVID.
Well, the problem is parents then, it's complicated for parents because they can't help if they have to work or if they're working from home, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily for me, though, I work from home, but I got more done in the last 3 days from not, having to do my typical stuff. Like, I would have gone to the studio twice, and Steve and I work at my mom's house on Mondays, so we could be over there, but also get work done. Steve, I can't tell you how much work I got done. It's amazing.
Yeah, when you don't have to drive anywhere. We got snowed out of the studio for 2 days.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was blocked in my house. I couldn't get out of my driveway for 3 days.
Wow.
That's nuts.
There was our plow guy. It was so backed up. He ended up getting to our house at 3 a.m.
Yeah, they're making money like crazy, though.
Yeah, that's probably their annual
this year.
income, like over for 1 month.
Right? The last
This
10
year,
years,
man.
not so much.
Yeah, they're going to Disney World in a couple months after this winter.
Evan knows what it's like, though, to have your annual work compressed to a short amount of time.
That's right.
Yeah, seasonal work is tough. There's no joke about it. You're sleep deprived. You don't have time to have a regular meal, a sit-down meal with anyone. Long days. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's not healthy, frankly. It's really not a healthy business.
Yeah, especially when they put you on the rack, in early April, they put you on the rack. Oh, boy.
All this sitting, but it's all sitting in front of a computer constantly. I have to constantly get up every hour and walk around because if I don't, I will start to really get sore, and that's no good because if you do, your muscles start to ache. Then it slows down your work pace, and then you're really screwed.
Have you tried those sit-stand stations?
Yes, I do have one. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I do use it. Yes, I do use it occasionally. But walking is the thing. You have to get out and not be in front of a screen for some time.
Yeah. I've been walking every day for the past month. I love it. Love it.
So healthy. Walk. Continue to walk.
Yeah, I had unhealthy work schedule for like 10 years.
When you had those months in which you were, what was it, attending or rounds or?
From the moment I started rounding in the hospital, so third year of medical school through the end of my fellowship, you're working 100-hour weeks,
Yes.
basically. And this is before. Now there's all kinds of regulations that limit the amount of time you can work in a row and how much time you need to have off.
And even with those regulations, it's still bad.
It's still bad, but I was pre-regulation.
Yeah.
So I had the 36-hour days sometimes, and
how
just
wonderful
crazy.
for patient care.
Right? Doesn't everything decline as a result?
Yes, that's why they put in regulation.
Hence the regulation.
Sure.
Yeah, that was up. There's no way I could do that kind of thing now.
No.
It's one thing when you're in your 20s,
That's the point. Yep, too. Right. 50s, 60s, ain't
Forget
happening.
about it.
Forget about it.
Forget about it.
Forget about it. I'll be referencing walking a little bit in my news item later. A little foreshadowing there.
And we also foreshadowed one of Jay's items talking about taxes. Jay, you're going to start us off with a swindler's list about tax fraud.
Yeah, I did email Evan. I told him to back me up because Evan is swimming in this stuff. But I try to do this every year because I just want to tell people like what the latest scams are that are being reported.
Yeah, it's a healthy reminder. Very good.
And it's bad. You know,
It is bad.
AI is helping a lot here. There's a refund text and email phishing scam going on. You get a text or an email. It's going to claim that your refund was approved, or it was processed, or it was delayed, or it needs some type of identity verification. And this link takes you to, of course, a fake IRS site or a state portal site, and it'll ask for your social security number, your bank details, and you give them that, they got you. And it's going to happen quick. So you should never be giving that information out. I think just in general, don't give it out. If you're talking to your doctor that you know and they ask for it, I push back and I go, do you really need it? Can you verify me another way? Like, I don't want to give my social out.
Yeah, there's no reason to give your social out.
Yeah, you
Never.
can almost always leave that line blank, and they're like, yeah, you don't have to put anything in there.
And your bank details, there's virtually no reason you ever have to tell anybody your bank details. I mean, if they're going to do a bank transfer, that's one thing, but even still, you have to give them, your bank account number.
Your routing, your routing at least, right?
The routing number is generic for the bank. It's the bank account, your ID with the bank. That's the number that I would not freely give out.
If you're going to transfer money like that, you could just use something like Zelle, right? Which will go from bank account to bank account, but you're not giving out anything that's
nasty. Again, there's pluses and minuses to everything, Bob, because like Zelle, there's no insurance, there's no...
That's right. Be careful with
it's
Zelle.
just a raw transaction.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way, but that's another future installment of Swindler's List. Shall we?
Oh yeah, Bob and I have a cool thing. Well, it's a sad story, but it's a good lesson. All right, so we got the W-2 wage manipulation and fake return schemes. This one is the current IRS warning is about scams that coach people to file false returns by inventing W-2 wages or withholding amounts to trigger a bigger refund, and this can expose the filer to penalties and investigation. Essentially, people are being told you could falsify your return, and they're doing it, and you can get caught. Because there's Evan, of course, could speak smarter at this than I am. But basically, if you fall within normal parameters, and there are normal parameters for every income level, usually you're fine, and you could look up what those normal parameters are. But if you step outside of them and you're too many hits on the same return or whatever, like there's an algorithm that you'll be beholden to. Even though, the IRS is pretty gutted. So I'm really not sure how well they're going to operate this year, but still, just be careful. Make sure you file as truthfully as you possibly can.
I'll add to that. There are different levels of kinds of penalties and the worst one is willful. Anytime you hear the word willful, that's a big problem, because that usually means you're in for jail time if a court can find you guilty and put you away in jail for doing things like what Jay is saying, claiming that you have refunds or W-2s or other tax forms that you don't have, but that they say, oh yeah, you paid in this money, now I want to get it back as a refund. That is willful, and those carry the harshest penalties.
Next one is the AI-boosted phone scams, synthetic voices, tax resolution style imposters.
Oh, yes.
You get a phone call or it's a voicemail. It sounds completely polished. It sounds legitimate, realistic voices. It can even be voices that you know. They claim there's a problem with your tax return. They offer you can enroll in a program that can help you. The program doesn't exist. And of course, the ultimate goal here is identity theft. They're just trying to extract your information. Some of these scams, they'll ask for your credit card information to make a payment, and then they'll completely drain you. It's just one of those things. Again, like we're at the point, I think I said this last year, you cannot trust the voices that you hear now. Mm-hmm. If you get a phone call from your bank, call them back at the number that you know that they are,
Right. The IRS and the other state agencies, they will never call you. They will never send you a text, and they will never send you an email asking for information. Those will never happen. Absolute red flags. Do not reply to them. Do not open any attachments.
Send you stuff in the mail.
It's happening like crazy. These scams are automated.
Yes.
So,
they're easy because they're easy.
Yeah.
They're extremely easy to launch. You send out millions of these things and you only need a couple hits to get some payback.
Yeah. And the thing is, again, it's automated to the point where they just have to set it up. And tax season is stress season, not
Correct.
just for Evan, but for all of us filing our taxes. And, there are people out there that get so freaked out, that it could be so wound tight that they'll make quick decisions and not really think it through. That's why talk to your parents, talk to your grandparents, any people that particularly elderly, because people can get, they don't think as well. They're not as quick on their feet. They could be more worried about their money.
Not as tech savvy.
Yeah, they're not tech savvy. Call them up and just tell them, look, call me if anything weird happens or anything that's asking for information. Let you be the buffer for them.
Agreed.
Another thing, the stimulus or tax credit bait via text and social media. So messages that you'll get will claim that you qualify for a stimulus payment, a special credit, an urgent benefit update, anything that they could do to capture you, right? To gather your attention. And then they're going to try to get your personal data. It's always the personal data that they want. And the IRS specifically says you got to watch out for this and don't initiate contact in any way with anything like this. Ev, will the IRS talk to you via snail mail?
Yes. In fact, that is the only
way, right?
way. And even then, the criminals have found ways to make near perfect looking replicas of IRS letters and state letters in some cases.
That's probably actually relatively easy to do.
Today, I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
It is, but if you know what to look for, there are inconsistencies within those letters that can be found that do not either relate to your particular situation, or they have one piece of data that they reference that is incorrect. So there are crumbs that can be found, but they're not easily detectable. So if you do get letters and you have any questions about it, and even if you don't have an accountant or a person to prepare your taxes, you can still call somebody. You can still call a professional before you reply to anything and ask them for their opinion. Yeah, they may charge you an hour fee or something like that, but at least you're not going to lose thousands or tens of thousands of dollars as a result.
Yeah, they also do this unclaimed refund thing. These are all just ways to get at your information. But the unclaimed refund one is very, it tricks a lot of people because
it's alluring.
Yeah, because I didn't get all my money from last year. What happened? And they give you some story, and it sounds good. And any of these can be connected to each other, right? So the unclaimed refund could be connected to the phone scam where they're using an AI voice. You know what I mean? So they're clever. They're getting a lot more clever. And I don't think that, most of us are keeping up because, AI is just it's throwing gasoline on their capabilities. So you could do some quick legitimacy checks to catch a scam. So first, if they're contacting you by text or email or social media or any kind of direct messages, treat this as high suspicious. Like, don't do anything. Slow down. Think about it. Talk to people. Check online. The IRS says don't initiate contact that way. That's not the way that they're going to contact you, and you should not be contacting or responding to any of that. Any request to pay by gift card, by crypto, act now or get arrested. Venmo, yeah. Like they're just not going to talk to you that way. And the last one here is do not use the link in the message. Don't use their phone numbers. Don't use their link. Don't navigate to irs.gov from their website or their text or anything, because, they could spoof a phone number. They could spoof any kind of link, anything you could click on, whatever it looks like. It'll be whatever they want it to look like. And to you, it looks totally legitimate.
Because sometimes you can hover your pointer over the link and you could see that where it's going is not where they're claiming it's going. And they've probably got around that by now, but I'm sure it's still plenty of stuff out there where you could actually visibly see and confirm, yep, this is bullshit.
If you see a scam, you're connected to someone with a scam, whatever, like if you have any evidence, you can email the IRS. You can go to phishing@irs.gov, send them what you have, screenshots, whatever. They'll appreciate it. You could forward texts. I think the number is 7726, which is spam, like letter spam on your phone. And your carrier can help block similar messages. There are things that we could do to help other people. So that's it. So be careful, guys. File early if you can, just to Don't do it last minute and get desperate. Just put the time in. I had a pattern for years where I'm like filing the day of, I'm like, oh, I got time. And then the next thing you know, it's like, oh, and it takes days and days and days to get documents. You're going to have to call your bank, a former employer, all these things that we all have to do every year that completely suck, by the way. Our system is so convoluted and utterly ridiculous, but that's for Evan to talk to us about after tax season.
Who I tell you.
But the bottom line is don't do anything under pressure at all when it comes to your taxes.
Yeah, the under pressure thing is a good rule of thumb. There's never going to be so much urgency to paying your taxes or correcting something or whatever that you don't have time to investigate it, to take a deep breath, to ask advice about it. Like, don't do anything under pressure. There's no ever a legitimate reason for that.
Take a couple of years if you want to investigate this. Go right ahead. But that's what I do.
It is true that if you do get something from either the federal government with regards to your taxes or your state with regard, because, I do individual and corporate taxes. And I've had times where a return, whatever, something was mismatched. My accountant did something weird or they needed something. They will send you multiple notices.
Yeah.
Your first notice, you really don't have to do a whole lot. I mean, it is good to start researching, but trust me, you'll get more than one notice. It's not going to be like, oh, hey, you need to do this thing, and we will never contact you again.
If you file early, the good thing that happens is you're the first person to file for you, because that happens. People will file for your taxes. They'll pretend to be you and file them. And if that happens, you're not in good shape. Don't think it's because it was.
Well, it's not, that happened to me, and it was no big deal because I just immediately notified the IRS and we sorted it out. And from that point forward, they send me a unique number that I use to file my taxes.
And then use people like Evan, because Evan knows what he's doing, and he is a font of unbelievable information. I can't tell you how many times I've called Evan at the day of. Evan, I know you're doing the last thing. I'm screwed. And he's helped me like crazy because he knows what he's talking about.
It's true. I will say, when you have an accountant, it can be really hard, right? It can be hard because you know that you're going to pay extra money. But at the end of the day, generally speaking, either they are going to help you maximize your return legally, or they're going to prevent you from getting yourself into trouble. So in the long run, you save money with an accountant.
All right. Thanks, Jay. Guys, have you heard about this new universal respiratory vaccine?
I did hear about this. I mean, is it legit, Steve, or what?
It sounds too good to be true.
Actually universal.
Don't get too excited.
Really?
We just got excited.
Christ.
It's good. It's a good, solid advance. But of course, the headline saying universal respiratory vaccine doesn't put it into context.
Into the mice.
Well, first of all, it's a mouse study. Right? So that's the first thing to know. This is a study in mice. So that means there's years of human research between now and actually putting this up your nose. Right? So this is not anytime soon. And most things don't make it through human research. Right? Most things that look promising in mouse studies don't make it through the human trials. But this is, I think, a solid technology that if this not specific thing, this approach has some merit. But in order to understand, also, this is not a regular vaccine. That's the other thing. So saying it's a quote-unquote universal respiratory vaccine without qualifying why it's a universal vaccine, I think gives people a huge misunderstanding of what's going on. So you guys know how vaccines work, basically, right?
Generally.
Bob, you want to give me a quick summary?
It's just pure magic, man. There's no science behind that shit.
That's right.
It supercharges your immune system to find what it needs to find and terminate it.
It tells your body what the disease, the infectious agent is in a way that doesn't make you sick. So that later, you approach it, you
multiplies
can fight it
the antibodies.
Yeah, it's all about the antibodies targeting specific antigens.
Because usually you get sick the first time and then you develop the antigens.
There's two parts to the immune system, broadly speaking, right? There's adaptive immunity and there's innate immunity. Traditional vaccines work by stimulating adaptive immunity, which, as the name implies, your immune system can adapt to and remember infections. So it identifies, it'll react with specific what are called antigens, receptors, proteins, whatever, on viruses, bacteria, fungi, pathogens, right? And then that creates a reaction, including the production of antibodies that target that get more and more fine-tuned to that receptor, to that antigen, and then it creates memory cells. So the next time you get exposed, instead of it taking days to ramp up a response, it takes just hours to ramp up a response, right? So you get a much more quick and robust response because those memory T cells are already there, as if you've already been infected.
Yeah, it's why all of us had to go through having chicken pox, but didn't ever get it again. Mm-hmm. Whereas kids today never had to go through that, and they won't get it.
Those kids today.
Yep.
I got to get my second shingles shot soon.
We've spoken about like a universal flu vaccine for years, and it's been in development for years, but it's very tricky. Do you guys know why it's so hard to make a universal flu vaccine?
Because it modifies every year.
No.
Oh.
No?
That's what I thought.
But the whole point about a universal vaccine is that you don't have to track the strains every year.
So there must be something about flu that is hard to, about general flu that is hard to attack, or that attacks something else that's important in your body.
So you got to keep in mind that these bugs have been evolving for millions of years, right? Just as our immune systems have been evolving. And most pathogens are evolutionarily mature. They've been around for a while, right? So like flu viruses. So one thing that they have evolved is that the highly conserved proteins, right?
Yeah.
Meaning the ones that are the same across all flu viruses, are well hidden. They're concealed in folds so that
they can't be targeted easily.
Can't get access to them. And the stuff that's exposed to the outside world are highly variable.
Is that why we can't even make a cold vaccine?
Yes.
Because life would be so much better if we had a vaccine for the common cold.
Yeah. So a lot of viruses specifically, they hide their highly conserved antigens. So we just can't get access to them.
Rude.
And the stuff that we can target change strain to strain. And therefore, it's just been really freaking tricky to make a universal vaccine.
I thought there were lots of different types of cold viruses.
There are too. There's different actual whole classes of.
But that's the point. Like, could you find something universal? The more universal it is, the more conserved it is across species, across varieties, across strains, whatever. The harder it is to get to, as a general rule of thumb, right? So that's why if it's really, really hard to make a universal vaccine against some class of pathogens, like the flu vaccine, that's why.
And it's even harder against the cold because it's more than one class of pathogens.
Right.
Yeah.
It's more than one species or even genus of
coronaviruses and
virus.
enterovirus. Yeah, there's a lot of.
So how did this vaccine get around that problem?
Because it probably is not actually a vaccine.
Yes. It's not, because it's not targeting the adaptive immune system. It's targeting the innate immune system.
Whoa.
So it's a completely different approach, which is why I think he's like, no, we didn't crack the universal vaccine problem. This is just a completely different approach.
It's a workaround.
It's kind of. Yeah, it's kind of like a workaround. But
So what's the difference between the adaptive immune system and innate?
okay, so the adaptive immune system is slow but specific, and it remembers.
Oh,
Oh, I like
Right?
that.
The innate immune system is fast.
in general.
It is non-specific, and it doesn't remember.
Oh,
So that's the shorthand. So the innate immune system is the first line of defense.
Yeah, it's the thing that prevents us from all being sick all the time.
All the time. It's really important. It includes things like your skin, right, is part of the innate immune system. It's just a physical barrier.
Mucous
But it also
membranes.
includes actual immune cells, like in your mucosa, that attack based upon general patterns. So there's something called toll-like receptors, TOLL-like receptors, which you will never figure out what that stands for because there's no way to infer what it stands for. It doesn't mean anything.
It's kind of like your science or friction.
It is.
well, there's a reason why it's called that, though.
There is. It's from the German word toll. Do you know what that means, Evan?
No, I'm not familiar with the German.
It's like an expression like, oh, unbelievable, fantastic, amazing. So apparently the person who first discovered these receptors said that phrase in German. And so they ended up calling it the toll receptor. But this is in a fruit fly.
like a eureka moment.
Yeah, like eureka.
It's a good thing he didn't say, holy crap.
Scheisse.
And so, but that was discovered in the fruit fly, and then when they discovered them in mammals that were similar, they're toll-like, so toll-like receptors. Again, it doesn't mean anything inherently. It's just an interesting history to that name. Okay, so what do they target? They target PAMPs. Now that is an acronym. PAMP.
What is that?
PAMP.
Oh,
Pathogen-associated molecular patterns.
It definitely sounded like you said pants.
PAMPs.
No,
Pamps.
double P.
Your brain made the closest match it could.
Pamps.
So what are PAMPs? So essentially, they are patterns that evolutionarily the innate immune system has learned is indicative of certain kinds of pathogens. For example, a PAMP may be, this snippet of RNA kind of looks like an RNA virus. That's a PAMP. Or this receptor kind of looks like a bacterial receptor. It's that overall vague, non-specific kind of pattern. This looks viral. This looks bacterial. And it attacks those things.
What if it's wrong?
Yeah, and sometimes it is, and that results in autoimmune diseases, right? So often this is
There you go.
part of the immune system that does that.
Damn.
So it's very broad spectrum, very non-specific, and it's very immediate but short term. And again, it doesn't learn, right? Because it's very non-specific. So again, it's very complementary to the adaptive immune system, but also that these two immune systems work together because the innate immune system will then trigger adaptive immunity.
Right.
And then when the adaptive immune system gets activated, that increases the innate immune system, right? So they basically reinforce each other and stimulate each other to get both defenses up as much as possible during an infection, right?
Well, and it sounds like what you want is for your innate immune system, as you mentioned, to be swift and to have sort of a ceiling of its intensity. But once it becomes overactivated or activated for too long, that can be dangerous for your body.
Well, it certainly wouldn't do it, casually, right?
Right.
Right. So it's either mistargeted or too active or persistent. So that's again part of autoimmunity.
So that kind of scares me about a universal vaccine that targets that part of your immune system.
It's certainly something that was going to be a lot of safety data that was required.
Yeah.
Maybe we could test it on RFK Jr.
As you've guessed by now, this new vaccine activates the innate immune system, not the adaptive immune system. And what it does is essentially activate receptors that cause the innate immune system to become active instead of for a few days, to remain active for a few months.
That.
Okay.
So it gives you basically 3 months of heightened respiratory protection.
I like that.
Because it's a nasal spray, right? So it's getting
that's
into your
good.
respiratory system.
So unless you have an autoimmune disease that targets that, because I have psoriasis, I would not want to put my psoriasis on auto drive for 3 months.
Ooh.
Yeah, so people with autoimmune disease always should ask their doctor about any vaccines.
Right.
Because they can sometimes trigger autoimmunity.
Yeah, I definitely sometimes have psoriasis outbreaks after vaccines, but what I wouldn't want is a 3 months worth. Right? But if it is localized to just things you can catch up your nose, that could be interesting.
Well, it gets into your lungs too. And so what happens is what they found in the mice was that these immune cells formed in the lungs, right? So you have parts of the innate immune system become resident in the tissue, as they say. So they're there, ready to go, and their switches are turned on, right? They just are persistently on high alert for several months.
So, Steve, you don't need to instruct it on something specific to look for, though?
No. It's just doing what it does, just all the time. Rather than flaring for a few days then going down, it just persists. Now, another thing to keep in mind is when you feel like total crap when you have an infection, that's not because of the infection. It's because of your immune response to the infection. right?
So are you going to be walking around with a fever all the time?
I don't know. That's a good question. But immunity comes with a price. You have to think about it this way. How come we didn't evolve to just always have this on high alert?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
Right?
because
I mean, if that were a
take a
good
toll on
thing,
us. That's why.
Yeah.
if that were an unalloyed good, evolution would have favored it. But evolution has favored having it flare for a few days and then going quiet.
Yeah, it almost seems like a better approach is not to have it like go for 3 months, but like fast acting ultra immunity, like just for that flight. You know, like I want to do the nasal spray right before I get on that plane with all those people.
That might be possible to trigger it for it, without increasing the duration, but just trigger it before you get exposed.
Or-
if you're going to be at a high exposure
Or
risk.
trigger it, but be able to turn it off.
Yeah, untrigger it
How do
later.
you do that?
Yeah, you have the antidote.
That wasn't part of the study.
The antidote. Right?
So they also included something called ovalbumin, which comes from eggs, and this they learned by studying the
hence
BCG tuberculosis vaccine. So this is a vaccine that also stimulates the innate immunity, even though it is an adaptive immune system vaccine. And the same researchers who figured out how that happens are doing this research. Like,
that's cool.
This is how the BCG vaccine stimulates innate immunity. I wonder if we could just do that separately as a generic, non-specific respiratory defense. And they found that it did. This is specifically what it happens for those who know what this means. Valbumin-specific CD4 plus and positive and CD8 positive memory T cells that imprinted alveolar macrophages, enhancing antigen presentation and antiviral immunity. So basically what that means, this is something that the innate immune system does. There are macrophages which basically eat pathogens, right? They eat pathogens and then they present the antigens on their surface. And those antigens that are being presented on the surface of macrophages saying, hey, attack this thing right here that I'm presenting to you, activates the adaptive immunity, the memory T cells against those antigens. That makes sense? So this stimulated that.
And you said it's specifically in their lungs.
In respiratory tissue, yeah.
Cool.
So they're ready to go. So the idea here is that this would be used for outbreaks, epidemics, at the beginning of a pandemic.
Oh, that would be nice.
Or maybe even for seasonal protection. So you could say, okay, in November you get this vaccine, and your chance of getting the flu is dramatically reduced for 3 months to get you through peak flu season. You probably still need the adaptive immune flu vaccine.
Yeah.
So this is again complementary to, not instead of, a regular vaccine. But like when COVID hit, imagine when COVID hit, if we could give everybody this vaccine and basically buy us months of, flatten the curve, obliterate the curve, give us the time it took to make a real vaccine that could then provide.
Oh my God, that would have saved millions of lives.
immunity.
Yeah, it's what
Could have saved millions of lives.
It's what all the charlatans and hucksters pretend they're pushing when they talk about boosting your immune system.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. All the crap that they were pushing, like ivermectin or whatever.
Yeah, this would actually do that.
This could actually do that. But of course, that means we have to have billions of doses on hand, ready to go. So anyway, so it's interesting. It would be an interesting additional tool to have in the toolbox, and it especially would be good for respiratory outbreaks and epidemics and maybe even pandemics early on to buy us time. It's another layer of defense. But for all the reasons that we stated, basically the risk of triggering autoimmunity of one type or another, or just having a lot of side effects because your immune system's ramped up for 3 months, there's going to be a lot of safety testing, right? This is going to be years of human trials, I think, before this makes it to market. But it's an interesting approach. And the whole backstory of the different parts of the immune system, I think, is good to go over. But if you just read the headlines, and especially if you know the history of our search for universal flu vaccines, you might have gotten the totally wrong idea about what this is.
Yeah.
It's a completely different part of the immune system.
Cool.
All right. Speaking of COVID, Kara,
Yes.
this is a story that started in 2020 and has never fully been resolved. Where did COVID come from?
And it's mostly resolved.
What?
Mostly.
Mostly.
But it's not
Like
fully
mostly dead?
resolved. Yep. Okay, so the WHO had an advisory group called the Scientific Advisory Group for the Origins of Novel Pathogens. For some reason, the acronym for that is SAGO. I guess Scientific Advisory Group Origins. They didn't want it to be SAGONP because I guess that doesn't roll off the tongue. So SAGO
Too much like PAMPs.
Right, yeah. They started...
Pamps are cool.
They started digging into the origins specifically of, the novel coronavirus, of COVID-19 early on in the process. Then they closed their assessments. They put out a publication previously, but there was a new publication that came out just in the middle of last year, June 27th, 2025, called Independent Assessment of the Origins of SARS-CoV-2. And this month, actually 2 days ago, in the journal Nature, the authors of that comprehensive investigation published an article called COVID's Origins, What We Do and Don't Know, where they summarize their big takeaways for a public audience. And so first and foremost, what's interesting is SAGO is a group of 27 original members across multiple countries. But by the end, or at least by the publication of this article in Nature, it was only 23 of those members. And they mentioned that one of them dropped out before the 2025 report, but the other three dissented from the decision to include the lab leak hypothesis at all in their writing, because they said it just doesn't have any data to support it, and it's silly that we're even talking about it. So they went kind of to great lengths at the top of this article to say, listen, we're only 23 of the 27. This is what this is what the evidence show us, and this is, these are our findings. But we want to make it clear that some people dissented from this and didn't want to put their names on this. So that's pretty interesting. So basically and it's from 27 countries. So 27 experts from 27 countries. They looked at every reasonable possibility. They said they weren't trying to blame any one country. Of course, they just wanted to understand what happened so that we can be better prepared in the future. And they looked at all sorts of stuff: case studies, animal reservoirs, hosts, insect vectors, environmental sources. They looked at evolutionary biology. They looked at all sorts of different kind of intelligence reports that they had access to, different discussions, and obviously peer-reviewed scientific studies that came out between 2020, 2021, all the way up until they wrote their report. And there was a big 2022 Lancet Commission. We probably talked about that on the show, right? I'm guessing we did, because that was one of the other big...
and we've been writing about it for the whole time
nonstop
on science-based medicine.
Yeah. And so ultimately, they came up with 4 scientifically credible hypotheses that they then dug even deeper into and give their kind of determination of each of those 4 hypotheses. So do you guys know what those 4 hypotheses are? Like the sources, like where did COVID-19 come from, or SARS-CoV-2?
CIA.
Wet market.
A spillover event.
Spillover event. That's the important thing. So, Bob, yes, you're partly there with the wet market.
Probably from the wet market, but spillover.
But yeah, spillover. So a zoonotic infection, right?
2 would be lab leak.
Lab leak. Mm-hmm.
3 would be engineered.
Yeah, so that's like kind of lab leak intentional versus lab leak
intentional, but actually engineered versus.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
You're missing it, Steve. Fauci got it from aliens.
Right. Yeah. Credible hypothesis. No, the 4th one is a little it's a little bit buried in the first one, I think, because like if you just say spillover, or actually no, if you say spillover, that is its own thing. But if you just say market, as you said, Bob, that would include both. So the second hypothesis is that it was actually introduced into the animal markets from overseas through imported goods.
Got you. Yeah, right.
The first is that there was a spillover.
That's China's favorite theory.
That's China's favorite theory. Exactly.
Right, because
that's what they've been saying from the beginning.
Because it takes the blame away from
exactly.
being centered there.
Wasn't the engineered hypothesis debunked like very, very early in the pandemic? When they looked at the genome and said, this has no hallmarks of engineering.
Yeah. So here they were asking, could this have been, produced through reverse genetics, basically? Could people have gone into viruses' genes or their regulatory elements and understood that, kind of backward calculated these? People do this in labs all the time. They take viruses and then they kind of backward engineer them to make them like less pathogenic, right? So that we can study them easier and not risk getting infected. So the idea here is did somebody take a virus and make it more infectious? And they did look deep into this, and they found that there's sort of no evidence to suggest it, and B, it would be really, really hard to do because the closest members of the class that includes SARS-CoV-2, so SARS-CoV-1 and other SARS-type coronaviruses that mainly hang out in bat reservoirs, they're mosaic in their genome. And so what ends up happening when they look at it is there are all these distinct evolutionary lineages, meaning that there were multiple recombination events over and over that led to these viruses, which makes it much less likely that they would have been engineered viruses, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And there's a lot of wonky science that they get. That's probably this section is actually, interestingly, it's not this, but also it's the most complicated to explain why it's not this. And you're right, Bob. They kind of figured that out pretty early, but they did do some research to figure out how replicable the virus is, and their research kind of leads them to believe that even before this virus evolved to become SARS-CoV-2, or even before humans caught the infection, it probably could have already replicated in human cells, which is another kind of evolutionary piece of evidence, which shows that it probably wasn't deliberately manipulated. But let's go back to the other lab leak hypothesis, which is that it originated from an accidental lab-related event. This is fascinating to me, and so I'm really curious. I mean, I know that we have debunked this over and over on the show, but one thing that I guess I didn't really realize until I read, what I could of this report is that they still can't say they can say it is very unlikely because we actually think we know what did happen, and what did happen isn't a lab leak. But the reason that they can't conclusively say that it wasn't a lab leak is because they don't have access to a bunch of data.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part. Like, they've looked at published intelligence reports, they've looked at a bunch of different scientific reviews, and they all say, no, it's very likely zoonotic. As we mentioned, it's very likely a spillover. There's no evidence for a lab leak in any of this. But every time they asked for the actual information, like the raw data, it was redacted. They didn't receive what they asked for. And so they just have incomplete data coming from the labs.
So they have to leave it technically open.
Which is why the intelligence community concludes, hey, we can't prove it was a lab leak, but the Chinese are being squirrely for a reason, so we're worried that it was a lab leak.
Right.
Whereas the scientists are saying, no, this was zoonotic. There's no evidence.
Yeah, and that's why they're saying that this one tends to be more of a political argument versus a scientific argument. And that's not to say that there's not some, concern there, of course. Like, why are you being shady? But the science doesn't point in that direction. So they assign levels of confidence to these different hypotheses, and lab leak is almost always low confidence because of that.
But not no confidence, zero.
Yeah, but they can't say it's no confidence because they haven't been able to look at all the information. And if you can't look at all the evidence, you can't make a final conclusion.
And at this point, will they ever have access to that necessary information in order to close this possibility?
Well, I think something that's interesting is they did actually say in this report that they requested more information, and that information has started to become granted, but they don't have access to it yet. And so there will probably be more data to look at in the future, which is, I'm not sure if it's the reason why, but apparently the WHO has asked for a new SAGO group to meet.
Oh, okay.
So these 27 people won't be in that new SAGO group, but they will assign new people to it. And, their goal is to be as unbiased as possible, obviously, and to really focus on the science. So basically that leaves the two other questions. Was it introduced into China's animal markets from overseas, which is what China has endorsed? Or was there a spillover event that was likely near the Hunan seafood market in Wuhan, or, near it either in time or in location, or both? And we've talked about this on the show, so obviously the evidence really does point to the fact that this was very likely a spillover event. And what do you think is some of the kind of corroborating evidence that we have that would tell us this is a spillover event?
They've tested animals from the market.
Okay, so they've looked at different animals that were in the market. Yep, that's important.
I think the big one is just epidemiologically. It's the pattern of the very first cases.
More than 60% of the known cases in December 2019 were either people who worked at the market, people who made purchases at the market, people who lived near the market, or people who had some other link to the market.
But as far as I know, and I don't think this has changed, they haven't found the smoking gun of the animal species that it came in, that it evolved in.
No, they do know animals that can get COVID.
Yeah.
And they do know that early on they were looking at like this metagenomic sequencing of different environmental samples. And so they indicated multiple wildlife species that were present. There were raccoon dogs, there were hoary bamboo rats, and there were palm civets there. And they are all susceptible to those early evolutionary strains of SARS-CoV-2. But they could have been intermediate hosts. There's no way to know if they were the first spillover event or if there was a spillover event that occurred earlier. So we really don't know. But what we do know is there are no verified cases of animal or human SARS-CoV-2 prior to December 2019. They said that there have been a couple retrospective reports of one or two cases in November 2019 in Italy and France, and then there was a wastewater sample in Brazil. But in all of those cases, they couldn't confirm those test results by other labs. So they're saying that's really low quality evidence. And where we have high quality evidence, every case we know about was in December 2019 and later. And so they don't know the actual source of the spillover event. But what they do know is that there are other strains that are similar to SARS-CoV-2, but they're too dissimilar to have been the direct progenitor. So they're probably like more ancestral strains, and those have been found in horseshoe bats in Southeast Asia. So one type of virus shares 96% of its genetic code with SARS-CoV-2. Another one shares 96.8%. So sorry, 96.1, 96.8. So the one that shares 96.1 was found in China in 2013. The other one was found in Laos in 2020. So it's very likely that similar strains have been circulating in Southeast Asia, and that there may have been one or multiple spillover events, and this is the one that stuck. We may not be able to ever find that sort of patient zero, or that, I don't even know what they call the animal.
Right, animal zero.
Yeah. But what they do say regarding China's kind of favorite hypothesis, saying, okay, well, maybe, people got sick here, but probably the virus was actually in goods already, and they came to our country and got people sick. The members of the committee say, we're 6 years out, and we just don't think that there's enough scientific evidence to support this, or really any. SARS-CoV-2 was detected, or COVID, do you say COVID or COV? Was detected on frozen goods, but this was discovered months into the pandemic.
So you have no idea, right? So
it's like people could have contaminated those frozen goods when they were testing them. And there's also no really good evidence to show that people caught SARS from frozen products at the seafood market or really anywhere else. So there's really no reason, and this is after a lot of investigation, there's really no reason to think that it was introduced into China's animal market from overseas through imported goods. There's really no reason to believe that it originated from deliberate manipulation of viruses in a lab. There's very good reason to think that this was a spillover event, right? A zoonotic infection. And there's no good reason, but sadly, not enough information to confidently say that it didn't leak out of a lab, but it's highly, highly unlikely. And that's just what we have to deal with sometimes in science.
Imperfect information, right? Always. Almost always.
Yep.
It's imperfect.
And so they've kind of closed the book on this. I'm curious about your guys' take on whether, like I said, 3 people in the original group fully dissented and said, I'm not going to put my name on this because you're including those last hypotheses. What do you think about that? Do you think they should have been included? Do you think it's important to say, hey, this is what people think and this is how we're going to debunk it, even though sometimes it leaves room for the conspiracy theorists to run
No, I
wild?
think it leaves more room if you suppress it.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
Yeah. And
That's already the narrative.
Sure.
The narrative
Exactly.
is the press and the government, whatever, was suppressing the lab leak theory, and which it's not. There's some truth to that, but it's not the conspiracy they're making it out to be.
Yeah, definitely not with the scientists. And I think that's
Definitely not with the science.
it's all about framing, as you mentioned.
I think what happened was once the engineered hypothesis was debunked, then the lab leak kind of got caught up in that net when science was like, this theory has been debunked. But it really wasn't until a year later that lab leak really started becoming proposed as a serious alternative to the engineered hypothesis. It's complicated.
Yeah, and I think you're right. There's an important kind of conversation about framing here, because like you said, if you suppress it, that makes the conspiracy theorists go wild. And my guess, I cannot speak for these 3 dissenters, but even one of them did publish, and she said at the top, "Let it be known, I disagree with this decision, and I want you guys to know." And I wonder if their take was, no, we're not trying to suppress anything. We don't think that it was even worth investigating because it's not a hypothesis. Like, you have to have some sort of observation to even develop a hypothesis. And so what they were saying is there was never anything pointing to this. So there's no reason to then go in and investigate it. And I could kind of see it both ways. But yeah, if this is going to be such an important narrative, again, you cannot separate the science from the politics. You have to understand the science in the context of the political landscape. So why not investigate to debunk?
Yeah, what world are they living in?
Yeah.
You have to address these things head on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, Bob, this is interesting. So talk about another way potentially to reuse spent nuclear fuel.
Ooh.
Yeah, this was fascinating, Steve. The DOE is funding research that could make it actually practical to cut the hazardous radioactive life of nuclear waste by 99.7%. Now, that number gets thrown around a lot on a lot of websites. They don't mean 99.7% in one day. This is not where that number came from. So they want to use a novel process to transmute this the nastiest nuclear waste into a form that remains super deadly, but only for a few hundred years instead of hundreds of thousands of years.
Well, that'd be huge.
Huge, yes. That's where that number came from.
What?
And
you know what? It's
Go
not
ahead.
huge. Can I just say this up front?
Okay.
Here's just the whole
Yes, it is.
nuclear
You're nuts,
waste
man.
is so misunderstood. The stuff that lasts. So, all right, very quickly, the more radioactive something is, the more intense the radioactivity is, the shorter the half-life. And the longer the half-life, the less the intensity. So the stuff that lasts for 23,000 years is barely above background radiation levels. By definition, it has to be, or otherwise it wouldn't last for thousands of years.
So it's a matter of volume?
So in a few hundred years, all the bad stuff's going away no matter what. And whatever's left over is like background radiation level. It's not worth worrying about.
Is
But
it really
people
just
get
above
so
background radiation, or is
insane
it far
about it.
enough above that it's still dangerous?
It's not dangerous. It's just not dangerous. It may be toxic, but it does need to be stored safely. But the idea that it's going to be dangerously radioactive for thousands of years is straight up wrong. But anyway, this is still a very good thing for other reasons. Go ahead, Bob.
yeah, and don't forget, Steve, that engineering storage for millennia is a lot harder than engineering it for a few hundred years.
I agree.
That's
I don't think we need to do that
also a
either.
big bonus.
Yeah, I don't think that's an issue either. You know why? Because I
Why?
bet you in a couple hundred years, we're going to have huge tech to deal with it that we don't have to worry about it, right? We just have to store it for long enough for future technology to deal with it better.
And then if we have an apocalypse, we're gonna irradiate.
We'll have bigger problems.
The poor schmucks that are trying to scrape out a living. So this is from the Department of Energy's Advanced Research Projects Agency - Energy. So this is ARPA-E. Didn't really know about that agency, ARPA-E. And they selected the Thomas Jefferson National Accelerator Facility to work on this project. And they got money, they got the grant money about a little bit over $8 million USD. And this money specifically comes from the Department of Energy's Newton program. And Newton is an awesome acronym. It stands for Nuclear Energy Waste Transmutation Optimized Now. So I can just imagine the meeting they had when they came up with that. So the current problem is that spent nuclear fuel from nuclear reactors there's a whole gamut of different types of isotopes and elements, and with varying half-lives and everything. But it's highly radioactive. It's nasty stuff, especially if you took some fresh spent fuel, and were directly exposed, you could literally be dead within days or even hours. I mean, this raw stuff, untreated stuff, unshielded stuff it's super, super nasty. And I'm talking, uranium, plutonium, plus the minor actinides, as they're called, like neptunium, americium, and curium. For this new process, they're not using conventional nuclear reactors like, say, fast or even the more modern nuclear reactors. They're relying on particle accelerators, and it's a really fascinating process. So what they want to do is they want to take particle accelerators, and in this research, be able to transition particle accelerator technology from more pure research into something that you could apply to a problem like this. So using these the particle accelerators, they accelerate, as we know, what particle accelerators accelerate protons to basically relativistic speeds, and they aim it at heavy metal like mercury. So when you have something like high energy protons hitting a heavy metal like mercury, what happens is that it spews out a lot of neutrons, and the word to describe that is called spallation. I think that's how it's pronounced, spallation. So the neutrons then collide with the radioactive spent fuel, and when that happens, you get several different possibilities happen here. So imagine you've got a neutron merging with a nucleus of a radioactive atom. So you could, if you just have the neutron merging with the nucleus of this atom, then that's a different isotope, right? Because it's not a new proton, because extra protons is what makes a new element. New extra neutrons gives you an isotope of that element, okay? So that could happen immediately when a neutron is absorbed. You've got a different isotope. But also during spallation, you could have a different element created, and that can happen when, for example, the neutron merges, but then it converts to a proton, like, say, during beta decay. The goal here, though, is to create fission. They want fission to happen. They want a neutron to join a nucleus and eventually leading to the fission event where the nucleus splits into one big, nasty radioactive atom into, say, two smaller, kind of maybe mid-tier atoms that aren't as radioactive, and something that will eventually be harmless much quicker than it otherwise would have been. So that's kind of the idea of what's happening here. So this is kind of like a reactor. It's subcritical, because a conventional nuclear reactor is critical, and you could have scary scenarios, as we know, where there's a runaway reactions that can do all sorts of nasty stuff. So that's critical, but these are subcritical reactions that are being caused by the particle accelerators, much safer. And then the bonus here, of course, is that many of these reactions, I think the curium is specific to this, also generate a lot of waste heat, and we can take advantage of that, right? So that if you get heat, then you can have steam, then you can turn turbines, and then you could generate electricity. So this could also not only take this radioactive spent fuel, but you could also and make it less radioactive over time more quickly, but you could also create carbon-free sources of electricity. So that's a pretty solid win-win. ARPA-E said that this technique can be applied to the entirety of the U.S. commercial used nuclear fuel stockpile within 30 years. So if this process was up and running within 30 years, they could basically convert our entire nuclear stockpile. at that time. At that time, of course, we're creating a lot more all the time as well. But that's pretty impressive. And then let's see here. So I was going to talk here about the modern reactors can do this. Like you said, Steve, fast reactors, modern reactors can reuse some of the fuel. They can burn some of the fuel, but especially for the fast reactors, it's more complex and it's politically difficult. And as I said, they rely on criticality, which can cause runaway reactions. So using these particle accelerators is safer.
So do all current nuclear fission reactors, right? That they all operate under criticality.
Right, but the point is that using particle accelerators, it's subcritical.
I know, but don't make it seem like a deal killer, because that's what we've been doing for 60, 70 years.
It's not a deal killer at all, but this is much safer than using fast reactors or modern reactors. And we are researching fast reactors, but I think China is a little farther along than we are.
Russia's had one for decades. We
had one, and then we closed it down.
We are currently building a couple of salt-cooled fast reactors. So the 2030s, we might see some coming online. So it's not like we have a bunch of them up and running and everything. They are proven technology,
right?
But we just haven't done it at scale. But don't underplay how much that uses the spent nuclear fuel. Our current, the traditional sort of legacy nuclear reactors only use 5% of the energy in uranium.
Right, exactly.
Whereas the fast reactors use 90%, like 90 up over 90%. So right there, you could basically run our country for 30 years just on the current stockpile of spent nuclear fuel if you put them into fast reactors.
Fast reactors are fantastic. They're more complex and probably more politically difficult to sell.
They're more expensive and they're more complex. That is true.
Right. And the accelerators are, they're subcritical, so they're safer for sure. And you could just shut these down. You shut down the particle accelerator, and that's it. I mean, the runaway reactions essentially can't happen.
But how close are they to this technology working?
They can make it work. My take is that
commercializable though.
No, they can make it work. The goal of this specific research can they make it practical? Can they make it efficient enough to be practical? That's where this $8 million is trying to show. So we shall see. It's a really interesting technique that I wasn't aware that you can use particle accelerators in this way. Yeah. So we'll definitely be following this. And thanks for that extra info, Steve. I'm just so surprised of all the research I did today. I did some hours of research on this stuff.
I've been writing about this for years.
Yeah, and that I trust. I absolutely. Yeah, I've read about it too. You've clearly done more research on this specifically than I have. So I absolutely trust what you're saying. I'm just surprised that misinformation is so entrenched that it did not come up. I mean, I was looking at the laboratory write-up on this, and they had no hint of that at all. So that's disappointing, but it's a good point to make.
There's an inverse relationship between the intensity of the radiation and the half-life. Just keep that in mind. Right? So just don't mix those two things. You don't talk about the intensely radioactive elements as if they have a half-life of thousands of years or hundreds of thousands of years. They don't. They have short half-lives. That's why they're intense. The other thing is, so there have been two ways to reduce spent nuclear fuel. One is the fast reactors, which is kind of an emerging technology.
Right.
But the old traditional way that we can do it right now, France is doing it, is just to reprocess the fuel, the spent nuclear fuel. You can reprocess it, re-enrich it, and then get more, like 30 or 40% out of it instead of like just 5%. So we could be doing that right now. That's just a matter of expense, right? That's just money. It's more expensive. It's cheaper to mine and process fresh uranium than to reprocess spent nuclear fuel. But if people are so afraid of spent nuclear fuel, then just reprocess it and we could reduce it significantly. And then hopefully the fast reactors will come online in the 2030s. That will reduce it further. And hopefully they could get this technology working and that will reduce it further.
Right.
That's kind of my other point, is that there's so many things online that can significantly reduce spent nuclear fuel. And again, get it down to only that sort of short half-life stuff, so you don't have to even worry about it for thousands of years, only just a few hundred years. That's going to happen, one way or another. Or there may be some other way that comes out in 50 years from now. Who knows? That's my point. We can't assume static technology for hundreds or thousands of years. That makes no sense. All right, let's move on. Evan.
Yeah.
So did you pick this news item just to please me?
Well, whenever bird watching comes into a news item, I mean, how can I not stop and take a second look at it? I have, Steve, a question for you.
Yep.
In 5 parts.
Okay.
Number 1, is birdwatcher and birder the same? Can we exchange those terms?
Yeah, as far as I know.
Fair. Okay. All right. So that's now. Number 2, you consider yourself a birdwatcher.
Yeah.
What are your bona fides for that? What makes you a birdwatcher?
Anyone can be a bird watcher. If you look at birds, you are technically a bird watcher. It's a continuum. There's no bona fides. There's no threshold. If you put up a bird feeder and look at the birds who come to your bird feeder, you're a bird watcher. That's it.
You have to keep the book, though, right?
The entry, you don't have to do anything. The entry point is super low. It's just looking at birds. That's it. But there's an entire spectrum from having multiple feeders like that are attracting different kinds of birds, getting binoculars, getting other kinds of viewing equipment, getting taking pictures of birds. Then you can go on birding trips. Go to like a location near where you live to look at water birds or different kinds of birds, whatever. There's a whole spectrum. Then you could join like the Audubon Society. You could do whatever. Anywhere along that continuum, you're a birder.
Part 3, why do you like being a birder?
So I got into it originally as something to do father-daughter with my daughter. And we both sort of fell in love with it. And, first of all, it was amazing to me how little I knew about the birds around my house until I started looking. Mm-hmm. And it just becomes really fun to identify new species. They're beautiful animals. And you just learn so much. It's just a great experience. It's a lot of fun. And it adds another layer to any trip that I take. I could look at the local birds and see new birds that I haven't seen before.
Do you ever talk or tweet to the birds?
No.
Number 4, Steve. Other than increasing your knowledge base and understanding of birds, do you feel that this hobby has helped you in other ways?
Yes. It definitely increases your attention to detail because you're sort of forced to notice things that before completely escaped your notice.
There you go.
And it's a good way to think about categorization and variation within species, and occasionally you're going to see rare mutants, and so you learn about evolution, about biology, categorization. It's a lot of stuff that you learn.
And finally, the 5th part, thank you for your patience. Did you read the recent study from the Journal of Neuroscience that involved bird watchers?
After you sent it to me, but I didn't notice it before.
Hey, Evan, can I ask question number 6?
Oh, go for it, Kara.
Only because this is like bothering me, and I feel like if I don't say something, then I don't know. Did you guys both just say bona fides?
Bona fides?
Is that how you say? I have always said that word bona fides.
Bona fides? I think it's bona fides. Well, I
just feel like we're going to get emails. And I was like, I can't be the only person.
It could be, maybe it is
I don't know. Maybe they are both acceptable, and it is.
I think I've heard it both ways, actually.
I've always said bona fides, and I was like, bona fides?
Well, I don't know. Did I put that much emphasis on the
You 100% did. Enough so
was I trying to be cheeky, maybe?
Enough so that then Steve was like, my bona fides are.
Well, actually, that's an Easter egg, speaking of birds, and we want the listeners to write in to tell us what you think of the word bona fides or bona fides.
I'm sorry.
Steve, the title of that Journal of Neuroscience study was called The Tuned Cortex, Convergent Expertise-Related Structural and Functional Remodeling Across the Adult Lifespan.
Is that why you liked it, Evan? Because it was tuned and it was punny. It is, isn't it?
Well, again, I only found it through the actual news article, which was originated from NBC News. Cool. And here's a pullout from the abstract. Here we provide a multimodal view of cortical reorganization in a domain for which high-level perception, attention, and memory are shaped through extensive practice, bird identification expertise, also known as what? Bird watching, right?
By the way, one of the references I found said bona fides.
Oh, interesting.
That's weird too.
A third way to say it. Oh,
I think that's
cool.
what I've heard before, bona fides.
Bona fides.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're all different.
And Steve, you touched on a lot of the things that you're sharpening a lot of your skills in a lot of different ways, right? And you become in tune with those little subtle motions, right? Being able to distinguish trills from background noise, for example. Or noticing, like you said, the very specific features of certain birds, noticing that pale eye ring that differentiates perhaps one, as they say, one warbler from another.
Or things you don't even think about, like the ratio of beak to body length.
There you go, right? I mean, I would not have thought of that unless you just said it. The NBC News headline read, "Bird Brain Benefits, How Being an Expert Bird Watcher May Boost Cognition." And you might read that and think, oh, bird watching maybe boosts your intelligence? Well, spoiler alert, the answer to that is no. But apparently it could change brain structure and brain activity. Their actual structural modification that accompanies an expertise such as bird watching,
i.e.
according
learning.
to this study. I don't know what the prior studies have said about this. This is just something that is current, so we're going to talk a little bit about the study design. Researchers recruited 58 adults. So that's a relatively small study, I would say, right? 29, half of which, 29 experienced bird watchers, and 29 novices with little or no birding experience. So they were comparing expertise. Participants underwent MRI brain scans to look at structural differences, specifically gray matter density, and they also performed bird identification tasks while their brains were being monitored. So this allowed the researchers to look at things, structural differences, along with functional differences, how active certain brain regions became during bird identification tasks. And here's what they found. The experienced birders showed denser gray matter in regions associated with visual processing, attention, working memory, and fine perceptual discrimination. Again, Steve, several of the things you touched on. And so these are exactly the cognitive systems you'd expect to be heavily engaged when distinguishing similar-looking species. And those same regions of the brain became more active when birders were asked to identify unfamiliar bird species. So the areas that were structurally different were also functionally engaged during expertise-relevant tasks. And that alignment strengthens the interpretation that these brain differences are tied to birding skill and not just random variation, although there is some pushback on that a little bit. Maybe it's not all just the activity of birding. There are some other, confounding factors that could be involved here, right? Such as just generally being in nature. You have to, in order to be bird watching, you're generally in nature. There's only so much you can do from your window. So you're out and about, right? You're walking around. In some cases, you're socializing. And these things are also tied to increased processing speeds. Let's see, who was it? Benjamin Katz, associate professor in the Department of Human Development and Family Science at Virginia Tech, said, birding isn't just a single thing. There are many different cognitive aspects. We don't know what the baseline differences are. You would need longitudinal data to make strong inferences about what birding itself is doing. Okay, so that's kind of like a caveat, right? That maybe, it's not exclusively the fact that you're birding, or as they say, any sort of attention to detail, fine activity.
They need to compare it to hiking. Why didn't they use hikers as a control group?
Yeah, wouldn't that be a good comparison?
But the thing is, yes, from a scientific neurological perspective, that's correct. But from the perspective of if I do birding, is that good for my perception and all that stuff. It is regardless of what the specific pathway, you know what I mean? Regardless of what aspect of birding is making that happen, you'll still get those benefits.
Yeah. And they talk a lot about neuroplasticity, which is also something we've talked about on the show, because they mention gray matter specifically, and maybe Steve, you can talk a little bit more about how the gray matter fits in here.
Well, they're just talking about learning.
Yeah, I mean,
That's all neuroplasticity
this is a
is.
generic response to learning. Anytime you look at anybody who does a lot of something, like if you look at violin players, they have more gray matter in the part of the brain that controls the hand that's working the fret, or whatever. That absolutely, that is just the physiological representation of learning. That's what that is.
I would love to see a study that compared brains of people who were not at all interested, who were almost like, I would hate to bird watch. That sounds like the worst thing I could ever do. And then they bird watched for a while, and then they looked at their brains after. Because my question is, are people who tend to bird watch just people who tend to have these types of attentional skills?
That's true. The error of causation could be going the other way.
Yeah. But also, Evan, something to note, 58 participants in an fMRI study is actually kind of a lot.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. It seemed
fMRI
like a
studies
small
are usually-
number. I mean, when we're usually talking about studies and
Yeah, I
numbers
know,
are
but
like
that's a huge limitation of fMRI studies is you just
Yeah.
can't scan a lot of people.
But 50 is a good rule of thumb for you can do statistical analysis, right?
Right. So long as you're kind of hitting that mark, you're in.
Yeah.
It's good. Like I guess you'll have some amount of power, but 58 is not a low number for an fMRI study by any stretch.
Good to know. Good clarification. So perhaps that's why they did have just that many, and that's what they were aiming for in order to get fair results. Something that they could really learn from here.
Cool.
Good stuff.
All right, Jay, it's Who's That Noisy time.
All right, guys. Last week I played This Noisy.
And remember, this is a very annoying sound, so be ready or turn down your volume.
Yeah, that was annoying as hell.
Oof.
All right, well, guys, I'm sorry. It is an annoying sound to most people, but this is science, so you have to be tolerant here. Hello?
Yeah.
Hey,
Okay.
yes,
You
tolerant
guys have
science.
any guesses? What is this thing?
Someone's nightmare of going to the dentist.
Oh my God, Evan.
I just had the second half of my root canal. Don't remind me.
Oh, no, sorry.
No, it's actually not that bad.
Evan, actually, you're mildly onto something.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Gosh.
Okay. So Ben Brown wrote in. He said, "Hi, Jay. My daughter Claire, no relation to the Claire that submitted the Noisy, asked me to send in her guess. She is 9 months old. This is 9 months, guys, listening to the SGU.
Wait, what? Really?
She thinks the Noisy sounds like a creepy swing set in an abandoned playground. That it might be
Oh my
9 years
gosh.
old. I don't know, guys. But I just
probably.
But when I saw 9 months, I'm like, the kid's a genius. She's listening to the show. She knows what's going on.
She knows what a swing set is.
So this is not correct. But I got to tell you, anybody who sends in a guest that's 9 months old can be on my show. Ben Simon sent in a message. He said, I have made this guess several times before, but don't read this unless I'm finally right. I think the Noisy is of something being turned on a lathe. But this one doesn't sound like a typical wood or metal turning. Maybe this is the sound of working on a plastic piece. Not a lathe, but thank you for the guess. Sharon Roney, who is a huge supporter of the SGU and a friend of mine, she writes in and says, Hi, Jay, it's been ages since I guess, so I'll give it a try. This sounds like something being sharpened like a saw, or maybe giving the Olympic theme a skate or sled blade. Not a horrible guess at all, Sharon, but you are incorrect. Make us more cookies. Stephen Hunter wrote in, said, Jay, this Noisy makes me think of a spinning lens atop a lighthouse, except the mechanism is rusty and haunted. I think this is a perfectly cromulent guess. Incorrect, but guys, there was no winner. This one was hard, and I admit it. But let me tell you what this thing is. This thing is called Dent Sply Sorona InLab MX X5.
What's its half-life?
It's let's talk about that for 45 minutes. It's a high-end 5-axis dental milling machine.
Oh, here we go, dental. No,
Yes, Evan, you always somehow you figure these things out.
Why?
It's used in
Why is dentistry filled with horror noises?
Exactly.
can't
I know,
stand
man.
it.
There is a factory out there where they're just thinking up the next weird thing that we have to go through. So this is a machine that's used in professional dental labs to fabricate crowns, bridges, implants, surgical guides, other restorations from digital designs. It says it can mill a wide range of materials, including zirconia, ceramics, resins, wax, some metals, and supports both wet and dry processing. It's a freaking miracle machine. And some dentists actually have this at their disposal. Like they have enough business where they have it on site and they manufacture these dental devices or whatever it is that people need. So it's pretty cool. It makes horrible sounds. And I could see why, they probably want it in a padded room or whatever, but it's a very useful thing. It really is a miraculous machine with all the different things that it can do. The Densplay Sirona InLab MC-X5. All right, guys, I got a new noisy for you this week. This was sent in by a listener named Matthias. Guys, if you think you know what this noisy is or you heard something cool, email me at wtn@theskepticsguide.org.
All right, one quick question. This comes from Matt from the UK. And he writes, I've been a follower of your podcast since the very early days. I really admire what you do and how you increase scientific awareness. My views have always been scientific, but your show has really helped me stir me into a positive direction. And he goes on praising us a little bit more. And then he says, I checked for local skeptical groups, but there isn't any near me, and I'd have to travel some way, which isn't really convenient. A thought struck me that I could start my own group. Nothing big, just a place people can go to discuss things. How would I go about doing that? And I guess, more importantly, how much work is that? I can't imagine how much time and energy you all put into things you do, but I don't think I'd have time to do it as a full-time thing. Matt. So that's a great question, Matt. There's a lot you can do, and basically you could put as much or as little time into it as you want. It sounds like what you're talking about is that you want to form a meetup group, right? And the skeptical movement kind of split into those two types of organizations, right? Organizations that create content online, which is mainly what we do, and organizations that act as a local meetup group, which we also do, but we kind of do big events. But there are a lot of meetup groups like Skeptics in the Pub. I don't know how active they still are, but these are still things that you can do. But you could just, that's just a matter of forming an email list saying, hey, once a month we're going to get together at whatever, this public place or this library or pub or museum or whatever, and talk about stuff, It doesn't have to be a lot of work, but of course, you could make it as much work as you want in terms of like how much prep you want to do, and do you want to get speakers in, and you could continue to scale that up and up and up. But I recommend don't overwhelming yourself initially. We've experienced, because we've been doing this for a long time, including local groups, meetup groups, etc. People who come in, they're very enthusiastic. They're full court press. They want to change the world, and they burn themselves out in a year or two. Yeah. So you don't want to do that. So pace yourself. Be realistic. Sounds like you are coming into this very realistically, which is good. But yeah, I think the easiest entry point is to just form a local meetup group, where you just get together once a month. And then if you want to add some bells and whistles to that from there, you can do that. All right, guys, let's go on with science or fiction.
It's time for Science or Fiction.
Each week, I come up with 3 science news items or facts, 2 real and 1 fake. Then I challenge my panel of skeptics to tell me which one is the fake. We have a theme this week. The theme is vaccines. Since I was talking about vaccines this week, I thought I would do that as a theme. All right, you guys ready?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Here we go. 3 items about vaccines. Item number 1, despite the claims of anti-vaxxers, no vaccines sold in the U.S. are made using human fetal cells. Item number 2, the World Health Organization estimates that about 50% of vaccine doses are wasted each year due to spoilage. And item number 3, The first known inoculation preceded the first vaccination by over 700 years. Evan, go first.
All right. No vaccines sold in the U.S. are made using human fetal cells. The anti-vaxxers would have you believe otherwise. Well, this is something I think I've heard before being bantered about by the anti-vaxxers, and I'm not aware of any human fetal cells used to make vaccinations. I mean, this one seems in line with what I understand, but there, is there one vaccine, right, that maybe uses some kind of human cells or something? I don't know. I think that one's going to be right. The second one about the WHO estimates that about 50% of vaccine doses are wasted each year due to spoilage. So that might be high, that 50% number. If this one's the fiction, it's going to revolve around this number. It's likely less. I hope it's less. We did hear a lot during COVID about spoilage of vaccines. I don't know if mRNA vaccines are more susceptible to spoilage as opposed to the traditional ones. And maybe that, when you bring that number in, it increases it, but I don't know about this one. I'm thinking this one's going to be the fiction. And the last one about the first known inoculation preceded the first vaccination by over 700 years. That does sound right to me. When was the first vaccination, though? Gee, I thought this, maybe my timeline is off on this, but I'm not surprised that the inoculation preceded the first vaccination, and by 7 centuries, essentially. So I'll go with the WHO estimates one as being the fiction.
Okay.
I don't know. 50% of vaccine doses wasted due to spoilage. So you're saying per year on average.
Well, whatever. That per year is redundant. It's 50% of doses.
Yeah, I don't like that. And so like thrown out, like fully wasted, not used.
Not usable.
Yeah.
And due to spoilage.
That seems really high. It seems like we have a very, very inefficient healthcare system across the world, if that's the case. And it also seems like that would be something that the WHO actually works on and wouldn't have that bad of a waste number. I don't know. That if that one's true, it really, really bothers me. But maybe it's true. And then no vaccines are made using human fetal cells. Yeah, no, that seems true. Do you mean like never even researched? Or you mean actually in production?
In production.
Oh, yeah, I definitely think. Yeah, that one's straight up true. I think that's true. I think that... So the WHO one is bothering me, but the one that bothers me even more is the first known inoculation. The first, I think, completely agreed upon inoculation is variolation. It was smallpox, and that was in like the 1700s. But maybe there were some examples of like, people cutting open their skin and wiping disease into the wound earlier than that in like the Middle East or in Asia or something like that. But 700 years ago, I absolutely don't think so. I think that's the fiction.
Okay, Bob?
Yeah, I could potentially see an accidental inoculation 700 years ago.
This is deliberate. This is deliberate as a strategy to protect against infection.
Oof.
By definition. Otherwise, it's just infection.
Okay.
Right?
All right. So the human fetal cells, no way. I mean, we would know that. That'd be ridiculous. I'd be shocked if that's the fiction. Yeah, so it's between those two. 50% sounds ridiculously high. You think they'd have that down by now. I mean, is the unit cost so low to them that they're okay with it? Or is there something we're missing in terms of preventing spoilage is a lot more difficult? But 700 years, intentional? Oof. Yeah, this one's, I don't know which one to grab here. All right, I'll go with the 700 years as fiction. That's just so long ago, man. It's just so much earlier than 1700. So yeah, fiction, 700 years.
Okay, and Jay?
I don't know why, but I thought that we did use, human fetal cells for something to do with vaccines. I don't know if it was their development or testing. I don't know. There's something there in my head. I thought I read something about that. I don't know if it's current or if this was in the past. Steve, the way you worded it, no vaccines sold in the U.S. are made using human fetal cells. Is that current or all time?
Current. We'll say current.
Okay, then I would definitely say that one is science, because I would imagine we don't do that anymore. If we did it in the past, I would imagine we don't do it anymore. Okay, the second one here, 50% vaccines. So that's a lot. That's an awful lot. I'm shocked to hear that number. I don't know if it would all be from spoilage, though. I mean, couldn't there be, if it's 50%, I would imagine there's lots of reasons why vaccines don't make it all the way to somebody's arm. But I don't know. That's 50% spoil. I mean, if it is typical that it's 50%, of course they know it and they have to overproduce it just to make sure it's available for everyone. And the last one about the inoculation 700 years ago, God damn, it's a hard one. I mean, I'll go with Evan and I'll say I don't think that half of vaccines are wasted due to spoilage.
Okay, so you got even split between those two, but you all agree on the first one, so we'll start there. Despite the claims of anti-vaxxers, no vaccines sold in the U.S. are made using human fetal cells. You guys all think this one is science, and this one is the fiction.
No,
What the hell?
Damn, Steve, was I on the right track?
Yeah, you were completely
Holy
correct.
crap.
Steve.
So
Shit.
you
Good
you are missing something there. This is I know what.
Wait,
you guys,
I know what it is.
What?
They're not harvesting cells anymore. They have a line that they keep alive, right?
You're correct, but that's not why this is the fiction.
Okay.
So the difference, I think, what anti-vaxxers say, they do sort of imply or say that they're like, but we're harvesting fetal cells to do that. But we do use fetal cell lines that were harvested in the 1960s. We're still using the same lines, right, to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But most vaccines sold in the U.S. are not made using fetal cells, but some are. Varicella, rubella, hepatitis A, rabies, and the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine.
Holy moly.
But this is what anti-vaxxers say. This is the bit that you're missing and how I got all of you. They say that vaccines contain human fetal cells. And what's true is none of the vaccines contain fetal cells, but the viruses are grown in human fetal cell lines. So they are made using human fetal cells. That's the difference.
Clever.
So that's what you would think of. They do
play.
not contain fetal cells, despite.
But fetal
the claims
cells
of
are
vaccines,
used
but they are used in making
to make
those vaccines that I mentioned.
like a chamber of some kind, or
It's just that's how they culture them in those cells. That's it. Otherwise, we culture them in chicken eggs or whatever, something else.
Yeah. So is the reason? Then why aren't we just using chicken?
That's whatever.
Obviously, the human
These cells grow
are-
because human viruses grow better in human cells, and if we can't get them to grow in non-human cells, then we have to use human cells. So these are the ones where we have to use human cells. But the vaccines do not contain fetal cells.
I was dancing right on top of that.
you were hovering
you were
over the
close.
target there, Jay.
Yep.
You're
All right.
closest.
This means
I got it too, Jay, because I said unless we're missing something really important.
You did qualify it, Bob.
All right. The World Health Organization estimates that about 50% of vaccine doses are wasted each year due to spoilage. Is science?
That's depressing.
Why? None of you
Is
mentioned.
it all spoilage, Steve?
Refrigeration.
Yes,
Yeah,
Evan is
refrigeration.
correct. It's refrigeration. So have you guys ever heard the term the cold chain?
No. Oh, yeah, I know what that is.
Yes.
Getting
has to
something
be-
that
from-
chain.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the entire
Yeah, it can never
length
thaw
of the
until you
chain.
use it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So basically all vaccines need to be refrigerated. They need to be kept between 2 and 8 C from the moment they're created till they go in somebody's arm. And if there's any break in that cold chain, it spoils.
become ineffective.
And it becomes not only ineffective, can become toxic.
Dangerous?
You
Ooh.
cannot use it.
Bob,
Yo.
don't drink the vaccine.
Do the vials have some
spoiled.
sort of sensor on them, Steve, that measures if something's spoiled, has lost?
So
its-
that's a good question. How do they know if the cold chain has been broken? I think there are ways to monitor that and to indicate if it's ever heated up or froze. That's the other thing. If it gets
go
below
too
zero,
cold.
if it freezes, it's done. If it gets too hot, it's done. It's got. I said 2 to 10 or 0 to 10 or 2 to 8, somewhere in there. But it's got to remain at that sort of narrow temperature range. So estimates vary from about 25% to 50%, but the World Health Organization says 50%. That's their number. definitely somewhere between 25 and 50%. It's hard to know exactly how much. The estimated cost is $35 billion a year.
So depressing.
$35 billion a year.
It's just an infrastructure problem.
It's an infrastructure
Steve,
problem.
Why don't they take that $35 billion and spend it on more refrigeration?
Well, because we're talking about countries with poor infrastructure. So there's a power outage. Boop, anything that power was cooling is gone. Whole shipments get wasted with, right? So if you're trying to distribute vaccines in a country with intermittent electricity, this is where the problem is. This is obviously not evenly distributed. The U.S. doesn't have this problem. Developed Western nations, they have some spoilage, but it's not 25 to 50%. It's lower.
Well, we should help those countries.
Of course we should.
Absolutely, but this is, infrastructure problems are hard to solve. You just can't throw money at it. You got to develop infrastructure.
Well,
you have to
develop infrastructure
stability
by throwing money at it.
Yeah. So, it's not just a matter of money. It has to be properly spent on the right things, and you have systemic problems like societal problems that you have to fix, governmental problems that you have to fix.
Okay.
It's not. It's an intractable problem. But the World Health Organization is absolutely working on it. There's the World Health Organization, right? The World Health Organization.
I can't believe
got me. I've had to discipline myself not to say the WHO because they don't say that.
Right, and I specifically don't say who. Don't say who.
Oh my God, that made my night. I'm going to fall asleep with a smile on my face.
So they are working on it. They have a working group working on it, and their hope is to get it down to 25% over the next 10 years and then down to 10% long term. But right now it's super high, and it's a problem because it does reduce the availability of vaccines to the poorest people in the world. It basically
means we have to produce twice as many vaccines as is necessary.
Yeah.
Or we have to develop vaccines that have a longer period of time that they can sit at room temperature. Mm-hmm. Even if they have to be cold at the beginning of the chain.
But that sounds like an inherent problem with
you know what? That's part of the reason why we still use thimerosal. I mean, the world, not in the U.S., which is a preservative. We put preservatives in vaccines for this reason.
Yeah, preservatives in anything are so that we can get them to
preserve
extended shelf life.
They do.
Yeah, it's a good thing,
folks.
All right, this means that the first known inoculation preceded the first vaccination by over 700 years is also science.
What?
Oh, man.
And it's not 700 years ago. It only predated 700 years. But the first inoculation must have been in like the 15th or 16th century or something.
Well,
right,
when was it exactly?
I don't know exactly.
Well, so again, like variolation, like smallpox was in the 1700s, and that's the first sort of generally accepted whatever.
Is that considered inoculation?
But
yes,
that's the definition of inoculation. That's where we get the word. But so 1700, it's 2026 now. No, but God,
700 years prior. So the year 1000 was the first.
Exactly, the year 1000. That's exactly the correct date. Yep. In China, they took the scabs from smallpox, powdered it, and blew it up people's noses.
Oh my God.
That's amazing. Go them.
Yeah.
Holy.
And it worked, didn't it?
Yeah.
It worked.
I mean, so somebody on drugs was like, yeah, crush it up and make them snort it, man.
So the first vaccine officially is Edward Jenner, right? 1796, right? So this is more than 700 years before that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
That's
and so
insane.
this kind of inoculation improves the survival from 3 in 10 if you get the natural infection to 1 in 50 deaths, right? 3 in 10
That's
deaths.
amazing.
Down to, so you still have a 1 in 50 chance of dying if you get inoculated with smallpox, but that's better than 3 in 10. So if you're in the middle of an epidemic, it definitely is advantageous to go that route. But yeah, things are always older than you think. That's a good rule of thumb. Yeah. So this was tricky this week. It was
clever.
Yeah. Those little distinctions made, using, and containing, right? That was the difference that made that one, the fiction. All right, Evan, give us a quote.
Too often we give children answers to remember rather than problems to solve.
I love that
Roger
quote.
Lewin, PhD, British anthropologist and science writer, who co-wrote 3 books with Richard Leakey.
Yep, I know. I think I've read some
How
of
to
those
think,
books.
not what to think.
Yeah, that's why when my kids were young, I know I've said this before, but it bears repeating. Like if they would ask me a question, what color were dinosaurs? I wouldn't give them an answer. I would ask them a question. How could we know? what color they were. Let's think about that, or whatever. I would always reflect it back as a question of how could we investigate that? How could we know? Give them a problem to solve. Absolutely.
Yeah, you sound like an annoying dad.
They loved it. Because then it's interactive and you're... You know what I mean?
For sure.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, they just don't want an answer. And they loved discovering that I was wrong about something. They loved
for
it.
sure.
There you go.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or
there's
that
a reason
any
kids
adult
always go, why?
Any
after.
adult was wrong about something. They, for some reason, keyed in on that specifically. No, I think it was an important lesson to learn. Like, no argument from authority. All adults are not always correct. You can't listen to every adult. You have to think your way through it. They have to give a reason for it. You know, there's how we know things.
And that's not even something that you have to foster in it. A child already has that. All we do is kill it.
Yeah, we have to just not kill it.
Yeah, like little kids go.
Kids are
"Why does
natural
this
born
whatever?"
scientists, right?
Yeah, and you go, because blah, blah. And they go, but why? But why? But
Yeah.
why?
Right?
Thank
And most people
goodness.
just go, because I said so.
Yeah, shut up.
Yeah,
kid, you
but
bother
I
me.
said
You're
so.
wrong.
That's why. Shut up, kid. You're bothering me.
All right, before we go, I want to say awesome job for Christian Hubicki, who survived the first
Hey, I haven't watched
episode.
it yet.
Well, now you know. He survived the first episode, and he kicked ass. He started
Spoilers,
a fire with eyeglasses. Of
course
and,
he did.
good
Was it
luck,
like a
Christian, for the rest of the season.
All right.
Survivor season 50.
Bob,
But no
I'm
more
convinced-
spoilers, okay?
Before the end of this season, he'll have built some kind of robot.
Out of coconuts and bamboo.
he has 3 robots on his shirt, which is awesome. I want to buy this shirt now.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining me this week.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
Sure, man.
Steve.
And until next week, this is your Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. Skeptic's Guide to the Universe is produced by SGU Productions, dedicated to promoting science and critical thinking. For more information, visit us at theskepticsguide.org. Send your questions to info@theskepticsguide.org. And if you would like to support the show and all the work that we do, go to patreon.com/skepticsguide and consider becoming a patron and becoming part of the SGU community. Our listeners and supporters are what make SGU possible.